My name's Jack, used to be a cop. Now I live in a trailer park a few miles outside of town. Not because I can't do better. I could, probably. But there's a calm here I can't find anywhere else, and the fishing spots around here, best you'll find without driving for hours. Some mornings I sit out by the water with a line in the lake, thermos of coffee in my lap, and for a little while it feels like everything's just the way it should be. I don't have much, but I got enough. My trailer's a little beat up, but it's mine. Fixed it up myself when I moved in. Replaced some siding, patched the roof, rewired half the outlets. Most folks here don't bother much with repairs, but I like keeping busy. Gives my hands something to do. Reminds me I still got purpose. After 25 years on the force, I thought I'd feel more, I don't know, accomplished, maybe. But the pension barely covers the groceries, and no one remembers your name once you turn in your badge. I still get the itch sometimes when I see something wrong. Want to help. Want to fix it. That's what I've always done. So now I fix things for folks around here. Washing machines, fences, leaky pipes. Mrs. Leary in Lot 7 calls me when her porch steps go crooked again. I rebuilt the back half of Joe's trailer after a windstorm nearly tore it off. I don't ask for much. Sometimes people give me a beer or slip me a few bills. Sometimes they just say thanks. That's enough. Don't get me wrong, I miss the job. Miss wearing the uniform, walking the beat, knowing I was doing something that mattered. But what I miss most is being useful. People trusted me. They looked to me when things got bad. I still want that. I guess that's why I help around here. These folks need someone like that. I live simple. Wake up early, stretch out the knees, make coffee. If no one needs anything, I go fishing. Sometimes I just sit on the steps and watch the sun move across the grass. Not many do that anymore. Everyone's always rushing somewhere. Even here, you see it. But me, I like the slowness of it all. There's this smell in the air in the mornings. Damp earth, pine, something else I can't name. It reminds me of being a kid. My granddad had a place by a river. He'd let me help him fix the fence or carry his tackle box. Said a man should know how to care for the things he owns. I think about that a lot. Folks say I'm quiet. I suppose I am. Not much need to talk when there's work to do, but I listen. People come by, sit on my steps, tell me things. About their families, their worries. I nod. Sometimes offer a word or two. Most just want to be heard. I get that. This world's loud, but it don't always listen, so that's me. Jack, retired cop, part-time handyman, full-time fisherman. Not looking for trouble, just trying to keep things running smooth. But trouble? Trouble has a way of finding you, even when you stop looking for it. I was working on Lenny's fence when I heard the old truck clattering up the gravel road. It had that loud rattle in the engine, the kind that said it hadn't had a proper tune-up since the Clinton administration. I looked up, wiped the sweat off my brow with the back of my glove, and leaned on the hammer. The truck rolled to a stop just past my trailer. Out climbed Earl Thomas, a farmer who owned about 30 acres past the tree line. Earl looked tired. His boots were muddy up to the ankles, and his shirt had dark stains down the front. Not blood, I don't think. Just dirt and worry. "Morning, Jack," he said, tipping his cap. "Mornin'. You all right?" He gave a short nod, then glanced toward the fence I was mending. Didn't mean to interrupt. Just figured I'd swing by on the way back. No bother. What's going on? I said. Earl shifted his weight, pulled a hand from his pocket, and scratched the back of his neck. Had something happen last night. 3 of my goats got killed. I thought it was coyotes at first, but They were torn up pretty bad. I mean real bad. Coyotes usually go for the throat. Clean kill if they can, I said. These were scattered. One of them was half a field away from the others. Looked like it had been dragged. And the tracks, they ain't right. He paused, squinting like he was seeing it again. I raised an eyebrow and waited for him to continue. Too wide, too deep. Not dog prints either. And not boots. I've been around long enough I can tell a paw from a shoe. He explained. I stayed quiet for a second. Just listened. Earl leaned against his truck. I'm probably making a fuss over nothing. Maybe it was just a big dog. Some breed someone let loose. Maybe. You call animal control? I asked. He let out a short laugh. Closest we got is Doug from the feed store, and he can't walk 10 feet without wheezing. Look, I know you ain't a cop. No more, but you always had a good head for this kind of thing. Thought maybe you could come take a look just to confirm. Help me sleep better. I nodded slowly, wiping my hands on a rag. I'll come by this afternoon. Earl's shoulders eased a bit. Appreciate that, Jack, really do. He climbed back into his truck, started it up with a loud growl, and pulled away in a cloud of dust. I watched. The taillights disappear down the road before turning back to Lenny's fence. I didn't like the sound of it. Not the goats. Not the tracks, but I owed Earl a look. Earl was waiting by the barn when I pulled up that afternoon. Sun was starting to dip low, casting long lines across the pasture. He waved me over, then led the way past the fence and into the field behind the goat pen. Right over here. Happened just past that thicket, he said. We walked in silence, boots crunching over dry grass and dirt. The field dipped slightly where the land rolled toward the hill line. I could see the edge of the trees ahead, and something about them felt off. Too still. I couldn't even hear the birds singing. Earl pointed to a patch of ground near an old tree stump. That's where I found the first one. The others were farther out. I crouched low and looked close. There was blood, dried brown in the dirt, and bits of fur clumped nearby. Whatever did it didn't eat much, just tore. I followed the marks with my eyes, saw where the grass had been crushed down, dragged. A trail stretched out across the field, heading toward the base of the hills. Earl stayed behind while I walked the trail. Every dozen steps I found more signs, shreds of fur, scratches in the bark of low trees. One mark, high up on a sapling, caught my eye. It looked like something had raked down with claws 4 long lines, clean, deep. I placed my hand beside them. Each mark was nearly as wide as my fingers. This was not a coyote. I didn't say anything, not yet. Just kept walking until I saw where the trail turned, slipping through a narrow break in the brush and up toward the rocky ridge above the field. The dirt was torn there too. Big prints, deep, spaced too far apart for anything I'd seen in these parts. Whatever it was, it moved fast. I came back to Earl. He was kneeling by the second blood patch, chewing on a toothpick like it might help him think. You find anything? He asked. I nodded, slow. Trail leads up toward the ridge. I'd like to take a look up there. Won't be long. He stood, brushing dirt from his knees. All right. I'd come, but I gotta get back to the cows before dark. One's calving soon. Go ahead. Just tell the neighbors to keep pets inside. Livestock, too. Lock the coops and pens. Just in case, I said. You think it'll come back? He asked. I didn't answer directly. It's better to be careful. Earl nodded. All right, Jack, you be safe up there. He turned and made his way back to the barn. I watched him go, then turned toward the trail again, eyes on the path, climbing into the ridge. The trail up the ridge was steep in places. Dirt crumbled under my boots and brush scratched at my jeans, but I kept going. The sky was turning that late day color, warm and gold, with long streaks over the hills. I moved quiet. Years on the force taught me how to walk without being noticed, even in the woods. There's a rhythm to it. Step, wait, listen. Step again. I followed the trail of torn grass and broken twigs. The deeper I went, the more signs I saw. Scattered feathers, more tufts of fur, even bark stripped from trees like something had passed through in a hurry or in a rage. Then I smelled it. The kind of smell that turns your mouth dry without knowing why. Not fresh rot, but sweet and wrong. It led me around a cluster of rocks and down into a small hollow. That's where I saw it. The deer, or what was left of it. Its body was torn open, one side stripped clean. Ribs stuck out sharp as fence posts. The spine bent at an angle that made my teeth clench. Its head was gone, not cut ripped off. No clean line, just shredded meat where a neck should have been. One of the legs was missing, the rest stretched out like it had been trying to run even after it fell. I crouched next to it. Flies buzzed, but I didn't pay them much mind. The tracks around the body were the same as before, wide, deep, long strides. A few feet past the carcass, I saw something else. The ground dipped into a small pit, barely 2 feet deep, half covered with brush and loose branches. Looked like an animal den, but too big for a coyote or fox. I walked to the edge and peered in. That's when I found them. Bones. All kinds, small, medium. A couple looked like dog or raccoon, but others weren't animal. There was a hand, human. Still had some skin on it, dried and cracked. Fingers curled inward like it had died mid-reach. Another one nearby. And further in, more pieces, wrist bones, a bit of jaw with teeth still in it. I backed up slow. My heart didn't race, not yet. But I felt something cold in my spine, the kind of quiet fear that doesn't need a loud reason. Just the sight of something that doesn't belong. People had gone missing around here. It didn't make the city papers much. Folks who lived out in the sticks, passing through, hikers, loners. You hear it in gas stations, at the feed store. Hey, you hear about that fella went missing last month? Never found. His car. Most people don't think twice. But now I was thinking plenty. I didn't know what this thing was, not yet. But I knew it didn't kill to eat. And if it was moving closer to Earl's fields, it was only a matter of time before it hit the edge of town. I already knew it was the same thing I'd seen signs of before, the same thing that had killed Earl's goats, left that deer gutted up on the ridge, and stared at me in the dark just a few hours earlier. The sheep hadn't wandered up here on its own, and it sure as hell didn't die here by accident. The thing had carried it here, dragged it, out of whatever pasture or pen it came from, brought it right up to the front door of a trailer that it knew was occupied, and left it where a child would be the one to find it. It meant the creature was getting bolder. It had left the woods, crossed the open road, walked into a park full of people, and delivered a warning in the plainest way it knew how. And if it could bring down livestock, drag it all the way here, and slip back into the trees without anyone seeing or hearing a thing, then there was no telling how long it would be before it moved on from animals to something else. Maybe it had come after another dog, maybe a person next time, maybe a kid. That's when I decided. I wasn't going to wait and see. By late afternoon, I had everything packed. I packed my old cop duffel with the tools I figured I might need: thick gloves, nylon rope, hunting knife, my Winchester rifle, extra rounds, and whatever else I thought I needed. When I had everything ready, I drove the old truck down the back road that led past Earl S. Fields and toward the base of the ridge where the trees thickened. I parked behind a line of overgrown brush. The sun was low enough by the time I stepped out of the truck that I knew I'd be reaching the ridge at dusk. Light stretched across the tops of the trees like someone had poured gold over the leaves. The kind of light that disappears fast. The ridge wasn't far, but the climb slowed me down. Loose dirt gave underfoot. I moved carefully, checking the brush, watching for broken twigs, anything that looked fresh. I'd memorized this path the last time I came through, followed the same turns until I found the clearing with the deer's body, or what was left of it. The smell hit me before I saw it. Rot, strong and sour, worse than before. I pushed past a low-hanging branch, and there it was again. The remains had sunken into the dirt now, barely holding shape. Flies swarmed in clouds, but I waved them off and moved past, toward the den. I'd seen it last time, a shallow dip in the earth, half hidden under brush and stones. But now, standing over it in the fading light, I realized I hadn't really looked, not closely. I crouched, brushed aside the dry sticks, and leaned down with my flashlight. The beam slid along the dirt wall, then disappeared into black. It went deeper than I thought. I dropped the rope down, not to climb, but to mark my way back. Then I pulled on the gloves, gripped the rifle tight, and eased my way in. The opening was wide enough at first, just tall enough for me to crouch. The floor was packed dirt, soft in places, and the ceiling hung low. As I moved forward, it narrowed. The farther I went, the tighter it got, until I had to shuffle sideways between the walls, my shoulders brushing each side. I kept the flashlight pointed ahead, checking each inch. The air smelled of wet soil and something older, like meat long past its time. The tunnel curved, then opened into a small chamber. My boots crunched on something bones. Dozens of them, chewed, broken, scattered across the floor. Some were small, others weren't. And then I saw the body. It was lying against the far wall, twisted, half covered in dirt. I stepped closer. His legs were gone below the knee, chewed clean down to the bone. One arm bent the wrong way. The face was bloated, eyes gone, jaw slack. But I recognized him. It was Trent McKee. He lived a town over. Ran a pumpkin patch during the fall, had a booth at the festival every year with hot cider and carved gourds. Used to laugh too loud after 2 beers and talked about maybe buying a second truck for deliveries. He wasn't a friend, but I knew his face. Now it was just hanging there, slack and cold, under a ceiling of dirt. This thing, whatever it was, it didn't just eat goats and sheep. It didn't just drag carcasses out to scare people. It killed people, took them from wherever they were, dragged them here, and ate them in pieces. It had chosen Trent, and from the look of it, it had taken its time. I stared at what was left of him. I stood in that small, dirt-packed room longer than I should have. My knees ached from crouching, and the weight of what I'd seen settled hard on my back. I wasn't a young man anymore, and this thing, whatever it was too fast, too strong to take head-on. Going in with just a rifle would be suicide. I'd been lucky it hadn't come back already. I backed out the way I came, slow and steady, rifle up, checking every inch behind me. I made it to the mouth of the den, just as the last of the daylight faded from the ridge. I could see my rope still there, trailing from the bush. I didn't waste time. I pulled it up, threw it in the bag, and got to work. If I couldn't face this thing in close quarters, then I'd bring it out on my terms. I went through my gear. I had jerky, a lighter, half a bottle of alcohol, and a first aid kit, a roll of old duct tape, a rag, and an empty canteen. It wasn't much, but it'd do. I poured the alcohol into the canteen, stuffed the rag down the neck, wrapped it tight in tape so nothing would leak. The idea wasn't to make a firebomb. This wasn't about burning it out. I didn't want to start a wildfire up here and take the whole ridge with it. I wanted to choke it, flush it out like a rat. I dropped some powdered chili from an old camp pack into the mix too. The stuff burned your nose just from being near it. Should do more than enough damage in a tight, sealed den. I gave the canteen one shake, lit the rag with my lighter, and tossed it down the den entrance. It rolled in slow, and I stepped back fast. A few seconds later, I saw smoke start to trickle out. Thick, gray, acrid. I circled around and found cover behind a wide tree about 20 yards out, the rifle ready, eyes on the entrance. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. 15. Still nothing. By the 20th minute, I heard something move inside the earth, or the trailer park. I walked back fast. Not rushed, not running. Just steady. The kind of walk you do when your mind's already 5 steps ahead, figuring what comes next. Sun was low by the time I reached the bottom of the hill and crossed the pasture again. Earl was nowhere in sight. I didn't stop to knock. When I got back to the trailer park, lights were starting to flick on in windows. Kids were still out near the gravel loop, kicking a ball around. Old man Hollis was sitting on his porch with a radio, humming along to some tune I didn't recognize. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. I went straight to the bulletin board. It was a leaning thing nailed between 2 fence posts right by the mailboxes. People used it for everything: garage sales, free kittens, someone looking for a ride to the doctor in town. I pulled the pencil from the string and grabbed a scrap of paper from the bottom tray. Wrote simple: stay inside after 6 p.m. Jack, tacked it dead center. Folks would see it, whether they listened or not. That was another story. As I turned, I heard chuckles behind me. It was Mason, mid-20s, worked nights at the gas station in town, and his buddy, the taller one, who drove the beat-up Honda with no muffler. Mason squinted at the sign, then grinned. He said something about it looking like a curfew. His friend chimed in, tossing out something about the boogeyman, both of them cracking up like kids. I didn't say anything, just looked at them for a beat. Mason raised his hands, palms out, like he was waving it off. He said he was only kidding. They turned and walked away, still laughing, their voices fading as they joked about some party they had planned for the weekend. I stood there a moment longer, staring at the paper. The wind tugged at it, but it held. That night I couldn't settle. I laid on top of the covers, boots off but jeans still on, shirt bunched up under my back. The window next to my bed was open. Not wide, just cracked, enough to let in the night sounds, crickets, distant frogs. A breeze moved through the trees beyond the park, brushing the branches like an old broom. I didn't fall asleep so much as drift off, bit by bit. 1 minute I was staring at the ceiling. The next I was floating somewhere in that strange place between dreaming and listening. My hand rested near the old rifle propped against the wall, just in case. When the alarm went off, it didn't blare. It clicked a sharp, fast rhythm like tapping on glass. I bolted upright. That sound meant something had tripped the trap behind the shed. I'd rigged it myself with a pressure plate, and a wired buzzer that'd go off inside if something big got caught. Most nights it stayed quiet. Not tonight. I moved slow, reached for the rifle, and crawled up to the window, careful not to knock anything over. The trailer was dark inside, no lights, just the faint green glow of the microwave clock across the room. I kept low, eased up to the edge of the window, and looked out. At first, I didn't see anything. Then, just over the top of the fence line, past the small clearing between my lot and the woods, I saw them. Eyes, red ones, set too far apart for any animal I knew and too high up for anything on four legs. They were just above the brush, unmoving, staring straight at me. The hair on my arm stood up. I raised the rifle halfway, keeping it down by my hip while I squinted through the window. Then it moved. The thing stepped forward into the moonlight, just enough for me to see the shape. My eyes took a second to adjust, but when they did, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It looked like a dog with the head of a rabbit. The body was lean, wiry, with long limbs and a sunken middle. But its head had long ears, bent back like a rabbit, and its snout was too short. The eyes glowed like coals, and it was sitting upright. Its legs were folded underneath, front paws resting straight, still as stone. I reached for the rifle with both hands, but before I could lift it all the way, the thing turned. Then it dropped low to the ground and disappeared into the brush without a sound. I stayed still, counted to 10, then 20. When I was sure it was gone, I moved. Quietly, I slid out the door, rifle in hand, and crept around the side of the trailer. My boots made almost no sound on the gravel. I reached the edge of the shed where I'd laid the trap, a bear trap I bought years ago at a swap meet from a guy who swore it worked on wild hogs. I'd sharpened the teeth myself, added the pressure sensor. It had been triggered. The jaws were wide open, the latch bent slightly at the hinge. Blood. Fresh. A thick smear along the edge of one tooth, and a few dark drops in the grass nearby. The blood trail was thin and scattered, leading toward the woods, but I didn't follow it. I stood there in the dark for a long time, listening, but nothing. Even the crickets had gone silent. I reset the trap with a gloved hand, wiped the blood off with an old rag from my pocket, and backed away slowly, eyes on the tree line. I didn't sleep easy that night. The next morning, just after sunrise, I was sitting outside with a cup of black coffee when I heard a scream coming from down the row. It was high and sharp, the kind of sound that makes your spine straighten before your brain even catches up. A moment later, I saw a young boy running barefoot through the gravel, still in pajama pants, tears streaming down his face. He was from Lot 12, 2 trailers down from mine. His name was Eli, maybe 9 or 10 years old. I'd fixed his mom's washing machine last month. I set the cup down and walked toward him as his mother came rushing out of the trailer, scooping him up and pulling him back toward their steps. That's when I saw it. There was a sheep sprawled across their front stoop, its body torn open from neck to belly, insides hanging loose like someone had reached in and yanked everything out. Blood had soaked into the wood of the steps and dripped down onto the dirt below. One leg was bent underneath at a strange angle, and the head looked like it had been bashed against the siding. I didn't need to take a closer look. A scraping sound, then a groan wet and awful, like a broken animal trying to breathe through mud. Then the thing appeared. It dragged itself out slow, one leg bent at a hard angle. I recognized that limp. The wound hadn't healed. Its movement was uneven, like the pain was catching up with it now. Smoke clung to its matted fur and clotted limbs, and the thing wheezed as it pulled itself through the dirt. It looked worse up close. Taller than a man but hunched over, its spine sticking out like a line of broken rocks, and its face, that awful mix of rabbit and dog, was covered in dark streaks. Eyes still red, still glowing even in the smoke. It paused just outside the den, coughing out that same ragged groan. Then it turned. It looked straight at me. Even through the dark, through the smoke, those eyes locked onto mine like it knew, like it remembered me. I didn't wait. I squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked back hard into my shoulder, the crack of the shot echoing across the ridge. The creature's head snapped back, and its body dropped without a sound. It lay still by the time I rolled back into the trailer park. The next morning, the sun had already crept over the horizon and laid a soft orange light across the gravel lots and sagging fences. I parked the truck in front of my trailer, the tires crunching softly beneath me, and stepped out, wearing the same bloody John jacket from the night before. 2 kids were already outside, bouncing a half-flat ball back and forth between them in the same cracked loop of road they always played on. One of them was Eli from Lot 12, the same boy who found the sheep the other day. He looked up when he saw me and froze for a moment, squinting, like he wasn't sure if it was me or not. His eyes dropped to the stains on my jacket, the smear of something dark near the collar, then came back up to my face. He didn't say anything, and I didn't offer him an explanation. Kids like him were smart in ways adults forget. They know when not to ask. I gave him a short nod and kept walking. Across the park, people had started to stir. Porch doors creaked open. Someone dragged a trash bin to the curb. A kettle whistled inside one of the trailers, and a radio played quietly from a cracked window. Most folks didn't know what had happened the night before, and I had no plans to stand in the middle of the lot and tell them. But the ones who did know, the ones who'd watched me leave with my rifle slung across my back the night before, they were waiting. Frank from Lot 3 leaned against his truck like he always did, arms crossed, cigarette hanging loose between 2 fingers. Mrs. Leary stood on, her porch in slippers and a house coat, holding her tea like it was something she might drop. I didn't wave or say a word, just looked back, steady and quiet. And in that quiet, something passed between us, something unspoken but understood. The kids were safe again. The yards were quiet. That was all they needed to know. After a shower and a fresh shirt, I got back in the truck and drove into town. I still had a job to finish. The police station looked just like it did back when I was on the force plain brick walls, faded badge logo on the front window, and a flag out front that never quite flew straight. Inside, the front desk had been updated since my time, now with a glass partition and 2 newer-looking computers. The young officer behind the desk looked up when I stepped in, gave me a half nod, and asked who I was there to see. I told him I needed Jensen, and he pointed toward the back with a little too much eagerness in his voice. Probably hadn't seen much action since high school graduation. Jensen was sitting in the same back office he always had, surrounded by papers he never seemed to file and plaques he never dusted. His hair had thinned and his gut had thickened, but the minute he saw me, he grinned like we were still partners walking the beat together. "Well, look who the cat dragged in." "What, they finally ask you to come teach these rookies how to actually hold a gun?" he said, pushing back in his chair. "Not quite. I'm here to file a report," I said. That took the grin off his face. He sat up straighter, pulled a pad off his desk, and clicked his pen. I told him everything I needed to about the cave in the ridge, the body I found inside, how it had been there for weeks. I explained that it was Trent McKee, the pumpkin farmer from the next town over. I told him there wasn't much left of the body, but enough to be sure. Jensen listened without interrupting. "Any idea what did it?" he asked after a long pause. Large wolf, aggressive, real territorial. I tracked it last night, I said. Did you kill it? He asked. I nodded to confirm, then he asked, what happened to the body? I burned it. Took it to the old junkyard behind Miller's and set it alight. Figured it was safer than leaving it out there, I explained. He raised an eyebrow at that, the kind of look that said he had questions he wasn't going to ask. We'd known each other too long for that kind of thing. He just gave a slow nod and scratched something down on the pad. Well, hell, you still got it, he said after a beat. I gave a tired smile. Barely. You ever think of coming back? Not full time. Just help train the new blood, he said. He clapped me on the shoulder with the same rough hand I remembered from years ago. I left the station, but Jensen's words followed me all the way home. The part about helping out, teaching the new guys. It had sounded like a joke at first, something said in passing. But as I drove past the old farms and empty lots, I started to think more seriously about it. Retirement was supposed to mean slowing down, living quiet. And for the most part, I'd found peace in that. Fixing fences, patching roofs, casting lines into still water. But these past few days had reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, that feeling of being useful in a way that mattered. By the time I pulled into the trailer park and saw the kids playing again like nothing had ever happened, I realized I wasn't as done as I thought. Maybe I didn't wear the badge anymore, but there was still something left in me to give.